Hello. Just getting things out. Getting set up. Let me scooch you back a little bit. All right. So today we are going to keep things a little bit simpler. And hopefully if you haven't finished your pumpkin yet, because it was too much yesterday, hopefully you'll be able to finish it today. So, yeah. I keep wanting to zoom in. Do you ever do that, like on books or like papers, like try to like zoom in on things? I don't mean to do it. I do it on accident. Okay. So, oh, there's my scissors. I was like, one of my kids walked off with my scissors. That's great. All right. So today we're just going to do the greenery on top of our pumpkin. We're going to use one stitch and we're just going to use it in 3 different ways. So we are going to work with the DMC 3345 today. Trying to find my end here. Somewhere in here. Darn it, I hate when that happens. Like I cut it too short or... I don't know what happened to it. This side has one, but I'm a little bit worried about pulling from this end. Well, that was smooth. Okay. Okay. So today we are going to work with either 2 or 3 strands, depending on how you want it to look. I want mine to look a little bit thicker, so I'm going to use 3 strands, but if you did like 4 strands on here, maybe do 2 today. Okay, so when we are pulling apart embroidery thread, when we are separating it, what we're going to do is, I like to do it all at once. Just take it like this. Now these 6 strands are twisted together. So if you look, you can kind of see it like untwist as we work through it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take my 3 pieces and I'm going to hold them with my 2 fingers. And then with this hand, I'm just going to slowly untwist these and just work my way down that. Now, if you pull too fast, then you'll just get a knot. So another way to do it is just to grab 1 strand at a time and just pull it out of your bunch like this. And then these should straighten back out. So if you grab 3 out that way, and then you can just put them back together. Oops. And line them all up. And then we'll put them in our needle like that. So however is easiest for you. I don't have a problem just separating them all at once. But then save your other 3 because we'll use that on another part of the pattern. So this other little 3 strands, like hold on to this. I usually just take it and wrap it around. I'll like fold it in half and then I'll just like wrap it around like that. So then I remember what color it is and it's ready for me to use next time. So don't throw it away. You can use it. Or if you run out while you're doing this, then you'll have that other 3 strands that you can use. Okay. So let's get to stitching. I'm gonna zoom in a little here. Okay. So I'm gonna wet that with my tongue, and then 3 strands is way easier to get into a needle than 6. We're gonna start with a knot, and today we are going to do a slit stitch. So we're gonna do this stem first, and then we'll do like the leaves and the leaf and the little curly Q. So a split stitch is just like it sounds. We're gonna start at the bottom, and we're gonna do, it's almost like a back stitch, but we're gonna split it instead of doing them next to each other. So we're just gonna make one straight stitch, and then we're gonna come up inside that stitch, like in the middle of it, right here, and we're gonna split that and make our next stitch. And we're gonna do that all the way up. So we're always gonna go down at one spot and then come up in the middle of our previous stitch. One thing is just making sure that your stitches are similar in size. If they're not exactly the same, it's not gonna be a big deal. But if you want it to look more consistent, then it means making your stitches the same size. Now, you can also come up with your next stitch and go, well, I'll show you in a minute. I'm gonna do this whole stem this way, and then I'll show you another way that we can do the split stitch next to it. So we went down right here. So I don't wanna come up right here. I'm gonna come up down here a little bit. So next to this stitch that we just did, I'm just coming up right next to it. And then I'm gonna go down right by it. And we're just gonna fill this whole stem this way. What I like about split stitch is that we get some really fun texture, where satin stitch is very smooth. A split stitch is a lot of texture. It's a little bit less texture if you're the texture is different depending on how many strands you're using. Oh, look, here I've got a knot. Let me flip this over, it'll be easier to show. So this is just like a little slip knot. So you can kind of see there's like this loop on this side. This doesn't mean that there's a knot that can't come out, but if you pull it, it'll loosen your knot usually, and you can usually just pull it right out like that. So you can do a split stitch with any number of strands. You can use like one single strand and split that. You can use 3 strands, 4 strands, 6 strands, whatever. Your texture will just look different depending on how many strands you're using. So whatever you want to do, I mean, you could still use like the 6 strands that we used on the pumpkin if you want, and do a split stitch that way. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I've done 2 rows here. I'm gonna come over here and do 2 rows because it's skinnier up here than down here. So I want to make sure that these 2 sides curve, and then we can do split stitch kind of at like angling up and then going straight in the middle. So I'm gonna come over here and do this side just because I want to make sure I keep that that shape. But this one should be a little bit faster than yesterday. So hopefully if you are behind from yesterday, that you'll be able to find a little extra time today to finish up that pumpkin. Okay, so I went down at the top, but this one stitch is a little bit longer than my others, so I'm gonna come up in the middle of it still so I wanna make sure I keep that texture. And then I'm just gonna go back down in that same spot, just so it is split. And then I'll come down here and start my next little space. So one of my favorite things with embroidery is making sure that there's plenty of texture. I do think there is something really great about pieces that use like all satin stitch. Like they look so cool. But for me, my personal style is like a lot of texture. I like to use a lot of different stitches so that you can see like different textures in one piece. Because really you could use satin stitch for a lot of this piece and it would be so cute. Like it would be adorable. But well, first of all, I want to teach you different things, but I like to use a lot of different textures. Okay, so I've got my two sides. I'm going to go up straight in the middle and then I will fill in what's left after that. So we're kind of moving around, but our trailing thread that's on the back is not going to be visible because this whole space is getting filled in. So we're not worried about that part. Does anyone have any questions while I'm working on this? About split stitch or about something else? I think texture is a little harder to see on the video, but once you see it in your own stitching, I just think that it's so cute for a little stem to have all that texture like pumpkins have, you know? Okay, so now we kind of have a guide of where our stitches are. I am the type of person that I usually do like the center, like I did with my pumpkin, center down and then center up. So I'm gonna go ahead and do like this center as well. I feel like I have an easier time making sure the angles are all working how I want them to when I do it that way. Of course, you can always do things differently than me if it makes sense to you. Okay, so now that I have that center guide, I'm just gonna go in and do a few stitches. These are kind of more just like random stitches. You can still like split. I kind of usually like put my needle and kind of slide it in so that it's a little bit more hidden, but you could also just keep doing kind of a split stitch. So I'm just gonna split this one like next to it. So then it's kind of filled in. Here, let me zoom you in on that. So you can kind of see some of them are more split and some of them are just kind of in there. And then I want to make sure the stem looks connected to the pumpkin. So I've been coming up kind of at an angle under that orange. So I kind of push it out of the way and come up at an angle. So if you're having a hard time making it look connected, try coming up at an angle and kind of pushing that orange out of the way. Okay, that half is done, and then we'll come up here. That might be an easier way. It might be easier to slide your needle under your pumpkin this way versus like coming up under it. So then you can kind of go like down at an angle and connect those a little bit better. I'm gonna do one more right here. And then we'll just do a couple right here as well. Okay, there we go. I'm gonna zoom you back out. Okay. So stem done. Let's move on to this little curly part. This might be easier with 2 strands. I'm gonna stick with 3 just because I don't want to. I'm trying to decide. I think I want to do this with 2. So I'm gonna move to the leaf first because I already have 3 on my needle. So I'm just gonna do 1 straight stitch here. And then I'm going to outline this leaf first, and then we'll fill it in. So another way to do a split stitch is to come up where your next stitch is going to end, and then you can split this stitch coming down. So go down into it instead of coming up inside of it. Does that make sense? It looks slightly different. I think it looks a little bit smoother. So depending on what you want your final thing to look like I really want this to look rough. So going down in the stitch worked well. But if you want it to have a little bit of texture, but also be just slightly smoother, I would say go down in your stitch instead of coming up. And maybe you're different. Maybe you're stitching, it looks smoother when you come up in it, but I feel like when I go down, mine looks smoother that way. So I'm just outlining this and then we will fill it in. So I would love to know, once you get working on this, if you find it easier to go up inside your stitch or go down inside your stitch. I generally will come up, nearly always, but that's just me. And these smaller sections, I'm just doing like 1 straight stitch to get that shape. Okay, so we have our outline. Then I'm going to come back and do just 1 line up the center. So I'll keep doing the same where I go down inside the stitch instead of coming up in it, just so you can kind of see that difference. And then we will, I think I'm going to go in each tip and do a line because I want it to kind of still fan out. And then I'm just going to come right under that stitch and go down. I'm gonna need more thread. Okay. I'm not really doing a split stitch anymore. This is more just like a satin stitch, like filling this in. I just want it to be able to see like the different, the direction that this leaf would go. Okay, I'm gonna get some more thread. Let me tie this off. Okay. Now I have this all twisted around my skein. I have to get it back out. Okay. All right, so I'm just gonna come back and finish filling this in. I am kind of splitting it when I come up here, so and then just going down to fill that space. I'm gonna come up in here. We'll do a proper split stitch on that little curly Q. It wasn't working great to fill in this shape how I wanted it to. All right, I think just a couple more stitches will fill this in. Okay. There. Cute little leaf. Now I am going to tie this off and get 2 strands because I do think that it will be easier if it's not quite as thick for that little curly Q spot. So let me get some double strand here. Okay. Now, if you practiced both ways, going up in your stitch or down in your stitch, I would do whatever way was easier for you on this little curly Q. So I'm gonna start down here at the bottom and we're gonna do little stitches. These are tight curves and stitches are straight. So to make it look rounded, we have to make tiny stitches. So I like coming up in my stitch, so I'm gonna do that and just make these itty bitty stitches around this whole thing. If it's looking too straight or jagged, make your stitches smaller. Itty bitty. And especially on these curves, sometimes I have to like push my needle so I kind of like pull the thread the direction that I want it to go. Like this one is kind of trying to not sit how I want it to. Okay, I'm gonna do this one this way so I can kind of push these threads the direction I want them to sit. It felt easier. I changed the way I was doing it, which is fine. If you need to change the way, okay. now that I'm past that little part. The second one might be a little too small. You could honestly probably do this with a single strand. Okay, do you see how my thread is kind of curling up on itself? That's annoying. Let me show you how to fix it. So once you have your thread down, if you, let me zoom out, hold on. If you let your needle just like drop, oh, you can't see that. Just like hang from your piece, hang from your back, and just like untwist it that way, then it'll stop like curling up on itself. Because that's real annoying. See, now it's not curling up on itself. It's kind of a curled thread because it was wrapped around my skein, but if you kind of let it untwist, then it's a little bit easier to work with. I had to make this loop a little bit bigger. So I also use my other hand to kind of guide that thread where I want it to go. So I want to make sure it like stays more on the outside loop. So I kind of, while I'm pulling my thread through, I use my other fingers to kind of maneuver it where I want it to go. All right, one more stitch. There we go. Cute little finished pumpkin. What do we think? I like it. Okay, so that is it for today. It was a little bit shorter than yesterday, which hopefully will help you have time to finish this if you haven't already. I'm not sure what we're gonna do tomorrow yet, so it will be a surprise to everyone. Okay, well, let me know if you have questions, especially if you're watching this on replay. Send me a message or comment on the video and I will get back to you. Have a good afternoon. Bye.